so big that they'll haunt you, or they'll calm you. That's how you know if you gotta go and get it, get to win and not conquer. I had to go out and get it without a sponsor. Kept it real, never crooked, yeah, that's honor. Now I can go out and get it how I want to. Hashtag bless, I choose.
What is up, YouTube Rumble? Welcome back to the Ryan Matta Show. We are coming at you live from the slums of Detroit City. Today is Thursday, May 16th. It is 10:10 a.m. We are off to a little bit of a late start, and we got a special guest. Robin's coming back on the show. Robin, good to see you, man. Welcome back, buddy.
It's great to be back. I love the intro song, honestly. I listened to it. I love it the second time even more.
Well, thank you, man. It gets me pretty gassed up when I do these interviews, man. Back by popular demand, my friend, you are absolutely crushing it out there. You're really making a name for yourself in the Bitcoin community. I would say you might be one of the fastest growing names in the Bitcoin community. It seems like you're everywhere. Your content is gaining momentum at such a rate. It's very impressive to watch the way that you're curating your content, the way that you're developing it, the connections that you're making, I can see you got like new cameras, new lights, new audio. You're going all in on this, man, and it's awesome to watch your journey, man. And you're doing a great job. I just wanted to tell you.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see. Like I'm like half a year really serious in the game. Like I started last year in the beginning with Twitter a little bit, but Twitter was just like a stand up and 1 hour earlier make some tweets and like it all of a sudden is like 10,000 followers. But the real name of the game was YouTube and podcasting for me, because then you make an actual connection with a lot of guests. You make an actual connection with the viewers and the interaction. So I love that a lot. Like I'm doing it every day now. I went from like 3 times a week, 4 times a week now to 7 times a week, like every day, having an interview guest here, sometimes 3. Today I have like 3 interviews or like 3 interactions, like 1 for me, 1 with you, and Twitter space later. And I actually love it. Like it's fascinating when you are able to just like stand up and talk about what you actually love. And that's the main thing for me.
Tell us a little bit about what was it like? You just decided one day that you're like, I'm going to do this and this is the path I'm going to go. And can you walk us through that like first little process? And then I want to hear about like kind of getting your first sponsors. Were you afraid to kind of go all in on Bitcoin and maybe it didn't work out? Like walk me through that process.
That's a fascinating story. I really like I started making content just on the side as most people do. But the process of getting all in on that thing and actually like quitting my job and doing it full time was a hard one, honestly, because I have this job that I had before, like over 6 years. It was like this reliable thing, this one constant thing in my life for 6 years, where like, okay, I get the money from there every month. The money is coming in. It was good money. I always had more than I needed, so I could save every month in Bitcoin. I could save every month something. And that is a position where like not everybody even has that job, where he likes the environment, he kind of likes the content of the job. It was IT security. If it would be Bitcoin, I would probably still be there. So it was for me mostly just about the content. Like the environment was great, the job was promoting me a lot. Like he really tried good that I'm getting fulfilled in this job, and I can actually learn something from it. So this made it really hard for me to go all in on this content thing and on Bitcoin thing, because it was the unsure way. It was the completely I am myself. Like it's only me. If I fail in the job doing what I did before in my normal fiat job, there are a lot of people around me that I can rely on. They can do the job. If I'm sick 1-2 days, they can do the job. If I'm doing a bad job in a presentation, I was never alone in a presentation. Here I'm always alone in the presentation. I mean, you are here, but the guest is here, but kind of I'm like just for myself here. So there are a lot of things that was really hard for the consideration to going all in, going this step. For me, a big one was Jeff Booth. Jeff Booth I interviewed, and he said something in the podcast. Like it was actually recorded. I did not really wanted to go this way, but he went his own way, and this was like he said, when you want to get involved in the Bitcoin community, it's not enough to just spend your money in Bitcoin, just putting your money in Bitcoin. And he said himself, he was making the book, he was putting all his financial energy in Bitcoin, but 80% of his time was still spent in this fiat world. And that's where Ego Dev Capital he founded, and now he's really involved in the Bitcoin community. Now he goes on all the podcasts and stuff like that. And this was one podcast that like made me think of that. And this was right in that area where I like thought of like, oh, I could do it full time. And yeah, I needed probably 2-3 weeks to make the decision. And then there was more things coming in. I got my first paycheck from Twitter, which was not a big one. Like it was like maybe a 20th of the ones that I got from a normal paycheck. But it was like, oh, someone is paying me to say my opinion. Like that's a weird thing to have. And then I got sponsorships interest, and then I was like, okay, let's approach the one sponsor that I actually like. The one sponsor that I use myself, that was 21 Bitcoin. And then they agreed to sponsor me, and they are sponsoring me to this day. And this was, for me, unfortunately, I don't have a good story to tell about this. I just like, I approached them, you want to be a sponsor? I made them an offer, and they like kind of accepted the offer with some tweaks. I never made an offer like that, and I was happy that they are doing it. I spoke with other brands also, but they were the only one that actually were willing to pay me up front, even though I had no real experience. And I'm loving them for that they are putting trust before, and they are putting it in me. Yeah, and then I got my first sponsor. Now I have 4 sponsors kind of. So yeah, it's now it's like I can wake up every day and do what I actually like and what I actually love. And I mean, it has almost nothing to do with Bitcoin, but the content is about Bitcoin. Like what I told about is not too much about Bitcoin, but I like just being here and speaking what I want to speak about. Probably the next 10 years it will be Bitcoin, maybe 15 years. At some point Bitcoin will be boring, as I said in a lot of podcasts. At some point Bitcoin will be so present in all our lives that it will be boring, like we make a podcast about email or TCP/IP protocol. Like nobody wants to hear that. But right now it's really interesting for me, and that's why I want to really focus on talking about Bitcoin. And yeah, interests change, but I feel like next 10 years it will be Bitcoin.
I guess it's really profound. I guess I never really thought about it like that. That maybe 10 or 15 years from now, it's been talked about so much, and it's just incorporated in every aspect of our life that it becomes like email. Like, yeah, I would never go watch a video on somebody teaching me about like how email works, right? Like I mean, maybe if I really got a bug up my ass or something, I might, but that's a really, really unique thought. I guess I never thought about it like that. What would you say has been one of like the most profound like aha moments in an interview that you've done so far? What have been some of your big takeaways that have really, helped with your conviction moving forward in Bitcoin?
There's a lot of small things, and I feel like you probably know, you're probably familiar with nudging, and I kind of felt like I was already a Bitcoiner, but I was really getting educated on the whole privacy aspect of it. I got educated on the non-KYC aspect of it. I got educated on the multi-signature and security aspect of it. Like I got way deeper in the Bitcoin sphere. Before I started the podcast, I was more focused on just the economics of it. I improved a lot my personal setup in Bitcoin. I think like we talked a little bit about that the last time I was on. So this was like the general theme. On topic, I get this asked a lot actually in podcasts where I'm the guest. What is like the most profound? What is the most profound episodes, and what are the most profound guests I had on? And the interesting part is like every guest has something special to them, and it's fascinating because I have a Bitcoin theme podcast, and we talked about so many things already. I mean, the one I did with you where we talked about politics in America, it was fascinating for me because I heard things that I never heard anyone else tell me. And I mean, the third episode, for example, on my podcast, there was this guy who said like Bitcoin is a system based on love, and I was like, I never heard that. That sounds silly. But then I asked him what he actually means by it, and we made a whole podcast basically on that concept, and it made sense to me afterwards. So like the most profound thing I got away from the podcast till now is there are so many unique perspectives on things that you have to really dive deep and try to understand what he or she is saying. And when you get to know what the person is actually saying, then you get to the actual thing behind. And my Bitcoin knowledge was quite extensive already before, but I got to know so many topics that I did not know about. For example, UTXO management, I was really bad with that. I was like, what is that exactly? But I made an extensive episode with that around UTXO management with Wicked. From I think he's well known on Twitter, like he has 50,000 followers. He makes a lot of videos about that, and I like his insights about UTXO management, why you have to be careful how big your UTXOs are, and that you should consolidate if there is a low fee environment. We can get a little bit into that if you want, but basically there are so many episodes where I got a specific topic, for example, UTXO management or politics or sports. I had athletes on the show already where we talked about mindset and even like coming back from an accident where something happens with yourself, where I get a lot of inputs, and I mean the most amazing thing on that is just learning. Every day there's something new in there. Every day there's something profound in there, and I'm honestly just getting started as Bitcoin. It will be interesting to see if it's at one point gets boring. I feel like it does not get boring because there are like people like Joe Rogan who does it for like 15 years. And I looked up the statistics. He did podcasts the last 15 years, 3.5 podcasts and on average every week. And this for 15 years. And this with podcasts that go for like 3-4 hours. And this is like a really profound statistics for me. Like he did a lot of a lot of shows. I think he's like at 3,000 something like that. When you look at the numbers, I don't know.
Who did you say that person was?
Joe Rogan.
Oh wow, that's
insane.
He does.
Yeah, he does podcast episodes since 15 years, and I think the statistic was 3.4 episodes per week. And the thing is, he does a long episodes, like he does 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours of episodes. And I feel like a beginner with like 100 episodes now. And it's really cool when you get to know so many different people and you will learn from everyone. Like, and yeah, I'm still young. I'm still 20. I'm just 25, and I'm learning every day a little bit more. And what to do next, because honestly I'm just getting started with YouTube. I'm just getting started with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is just getting started. Just getting started with everything. Like I reached out to you. I reached out to some other people about what camera, what microphone should I get. I tried around how to fix my sound. We talked about before, where I got my blankets, my egg boxes. It's life is a really deep rabbit hole, and Bitcoin is a great way to start. And Bitcoin touches so many topics, because I noticed in my interviews when I talk with Bitcoiners, they are talking about how to be healthy, like how to what to exercise, lifting weights, stuff like that. They are talking about what to eat. They're talking about what food you should eat. Obviously, there are like a lot of different camps inside of Bitcoin. There are the vegans, there are the carnivores that only eat meat, like not just also eat meat, but really only eat meat. So there are like all different kinds of people in there, but everybody is conscious about how they are spending their time, what food they're eating. And I feel like that's a great community to be in, because it's the community that are really sensitive about time. Like they understand that time that we have on the planet is extremely valuable, and that you should look at it. And if you're eating bad things, if you're eating the fiat food, as we call it, then you have less time, because at some point you will have health issues from that. Either you have less time, or you even have worse time on the planet, which is probably both really bad. So that's fascinating for me to get into this community. But yeah, and I'm also getting more and more invited to the podcast. I made also like now a playlist where I'm featuring the podcast where I have been on. It's now 6 or 7 or something like that. And I just talked about that before with you. I will also start making highlights of that and reacting to those to get better in being a guest. And yeah, one thing I try to not speak too much about, but I will try to get a book out this year. But I will not rush it, and I have I have a few directions I want to go, but not a precise one. But I want to like have all the knowledge that I collected till now with the podcasts, with my life in general, like condensed in a book. And I'm writing it for myself, but I will also have it publicly available if someone is interested.
Man, that's super exciting. I can't wait to see when you put this book out, man. I'm going to have to get a copy of the day that you drop that. You had talked a little bit about the Bitcoin is love. I want to hit on and kind of break through a couple things that you said there and unpack those. Walk us through the Bitcoin is love. What was the overall, like, high level view of that?
The high level view of that is love is only possible if you actually trust each other, whatever that means. Like you have to trust that someone else is putting up in you. If you look at the traditional love between two people, they're getting married, they're doing something together, they are committing their lives for each other. This means you need a lot of integrity, you need a lot of truth. You need to know a lot of things. I mean, there's fixed up marriages and stuff like that, which is can also be love, but a different kind of love. But for me, I'm talking about a traditional love, whereas two people say we want to love each other and we want to commit a life to each other. And his overview thesis of Bitcoin is a system based on love was exactly that. It's a system that's based on integrity and truth. You can commit your life energy to Bitcoin because it respects your life's energy. Nobody can steal it. Nobody can manipulate it. And this is like this trust you need, because it's a trustless system, actually. I mean, it's a concept that's a little bit like it's not something like you can touch on nicely. It's not something that you actually like, oh, okay, it's that because of that. But for me, it's like when you look at love, it's integrity, it's truth, it's a connection. And when you have Bitcoin, you also have this truth and integrity system. It's a system that cannot be manipulated. You can go back in time and nothing gets changed. Your balance is your balance. Your transactions are your transactions. It's a truthful system. It's integrity system, and that's a really interesting thought that he had. I would not personally say that Bitcoin is a system based on love. I would say that Bitcoin is a system based on math, on thermodynamics, maybe even as Michael Saylor puts it. But I think math is like the fundamental of it, because we have a system that is coded. You know what is happening when you put something in, you know what's happening when you put something out. And even thermodynamics, even everything else, like everything is kind of rooted in math, but that's more like a belief system. But in the end of the day, when you have money in general only gets value when other people value it. If you have trust in a system, then it can get adopted as money, as something that has a value. Because when we know the history of money and we know how money is actually created, we know it kind of starts as a collectible. Bitcoin also started as this is cypherpunk collectible, where a few people like, oh, that's an interesting thing. In the early days, it was probably more nerds that say like, oh, it's let's mine it, let's transact it, let's tinker around with it. But as time went on, people are like, oh, it actually has a value. It's a market. It's something financially I can and do something with it. This was probably a time 2011, 12, maybe, when it actually got a market price, when it actually had transactions. I mean, we had the pizza day earlier, but even in that, with that, it got to the official state where there was the first time a price was put on Bitcoin, but not really, because there was just like a Bitcoin was exchanged for 2 pizzas. We cannot say that's already a market price or like a financial thing. So like in 2011, 12, 13, where it got actually has a market value. And then it moves to the store of value phase, where it accrues the trust of everybody around. So like if you've put money in Bitcoin, I've put money in Bitcoin, some other people put money in Bitcoin, then it gains value because other people put their value in there. And that's a fascinating system because and he also explained that love only also has value when more people put value in that connection, that relationship. And that was interesting to hear about him saying, when we put financial energy in Bitcoin, we kind of make this thing bigger and better and more interesting. When we put love in a relationship, when we put time in a relationship, we make it also bigger, better. That was some of the points that I remember from, I think, like half a year ago now, the podcast that I made with him. But it's one way to look at it. I mean, one other thing that I got away from the podcast, there are a lot of different ways to explain Bitcoin. A lot of freaking ways to explain Bitcoin, and each person has his own beliefs, his own character traits, and each person learns the best way from someone who is similar to them. So if they are from a standpoint like him, and it's like, okay, if Bitcoin is a business system based of love, and he explains it that way, then someone is like, oh, I also see it like that. But someone else is like, oh, that's stupid. That's I don't like it like that. And I had you also had Gary Godone on, I feel like, and he said on the podcast, when he first got into Bitcoin, he found that the messaging in Bitcoin was really bad. And then he got scared away and was entering 3 years later or something. I don't know about the timeline, but he got scared away the first time and then came back in later because he found the messaging really bad. Don't think the messaging was bad. It was just not for him at this point. And this is why we have these trenches of money coming in. We needed Michael Saylor to come in 2020 to get more and more institutional money in. Now we have the Bitcoin ETF. Now a whole new group of people is unlocked with that. And that's how this whole system works, and how this whole system kind of operates. Because, and there's also this saying, everybody gets the price they deserve. And it's very true, because the big guys that have a lot of money that went into Bitcoin in 2015, they really deserve that, because they had a lot of money. They did not needed Bitcoin, but they searched deeply anyways and got rewarded massively. And that system of it has to be explained. And when there are only nerds explaining it, most likely only nerds came. Then there's some financial guys that come in, make it a store of value, give it a price. Then there are all of a sudden publicly traded companies coming in. Now we have countries with El Salvador in. He explains this for other people that have for other countries that like, oh, countries are like, you can actually adopt it. And I talked with Maya from Suriname. That's also a really interesting story that Suriname might be some second El Salvador. We had Argentina that
Wait,
did
say that
not
again. What
really
was the other one?
Suriname. It's a really small town, like 600
How do you
small
spell it?
country. SURI and then name. And that's a really cool one. Maya is a presidential candidate for next year's election. I mean, the country is really small. It has 600,000 people in it, as far as I know, and it's like a really small country. If, for example, I live in a really small country like Austria, but our biggest city has 1.2 million people in it. So even like our our city is like 2 times the size of Suriname. But it's interesting to see and where she ends up, and might be an interesting story also for you to have. There's some politics involved with that, and I mean, I don't want to tell it for her, but there was something with the president and his advisory, and yeah, it was fascinating to hear that story.
Wow, man, you touched on so many good points there. I don't know where to start. I was listening to the way you're describing it, and it's almost like Bitcoin. You had said basically Bitcoin means so many different things to so many different people, and what I kind of took away from that is like Bitcoin's aligns incentives. I think Robert Breedlove had touched on this a little bit. Like, it doesn't really matter whether it's the money go up technology, whether it's the freedom technology, whether it's the sovereignty technology. It can mean whatever it means to you, but at the same time, it's all it has to do is find one avenue to better your life for you to adopt it. And then the second that you adopt it, if Bitcoin aligns your incentives because it protects you from a treasonous government and you want to, own property, or if it protects you from a corrupt government that's abusing the money printer and devaluing your currency, or it becomes a way for you to transact because you live in a country that doesn't have banks. Oh, did I start coming through your ears again? Oh, I don't know. It sounded like something changed there for a second. I sound like I was coming back through. But yeah, it aligns incentives into so many different ways that it doesn't really matter how it attracts you. But like once it attracts you, it's like your incentives align with, doesn't matter what race you are, what color you are, what ethnicity you are. You just adopt Bitcoin, and once you start believing it and living off the Bitcoin standard, your entire dynamic and perspective on reality shifts to like this world of greed, corruption, and like seems like a race to the bottom to like this other world that has unlimited abundance and there's happiness and joy. And it's almost like there's two different realities playing out. Like, in which one do you want to be on? What do you think about that as far like from like a reality standpoint? And do you see like, I don't know, just walk me through like the evolution of where we are as far as like leaving the fiat world and adopting Bitcoin. Like, at what point in the journey do you think we're on?
We are really early. And I feel like sometimes we losing our own selves in too much in speaking to each other and thinking that we are really far. But once you get in your family circle that you didn't orange pill, like the far away family that did not hear about Bitcoin. I mean, my closer family, like they're all kind of in Bitcoin and they are open to the idea. But even though those are not really orange pill, they just have Bitcoin and they like the store of value aspect of it. But there are a lot of more aspects, as you said, like the freedom aspect and stuff like that. So we are extremely early when it comes to that. There's like this S-curve adoption where when we hit the 10%, we probably only need like a decade or maybe a little bit more than a decade to go from 10% to like 90%. So the first 10% are right around the same time that we need for the next 80%, which is a fascinating concept. And when we look at it, like when I see my family table in the Christmas lights, when we are having the Christmas in every year, and I see the whole family, and 2020, there was just me. Like I was just getting started with Bitcoin. I was telling a lot of people about Bitcoin, and nobody in the family had Bitcoin except me. I was the only one in there. It also like no friend of mine had it. So I was like this Bitcoin guy. But 2021, a good friend of mine and also my cousin got in it, and he really understood it really quickly. He's also really against government, and he sees a lot of the corruption. He saw it before Bitcoin, but then Bitcoin was really easy for him to grasp, and now he's really big on Bitcoin. He sometimes strays a little altcoin to get more Bitcoin. I try to get him out of this, but yeah, everybody has his sins.
Yeah, we've been there. We've been there.
And but I watch every Christmas from then on. It's like my mom, dad are in there, my sister, then like some uncles. So they're getting more and more seats filled. And at some point, we're hitting this point where like 10-20% of the table is filled with Bitcoiners. And when the topic of Bitcoin then comes up, it's a normal one to talk about because so many different people, like my small cousin, my older uncle, my younger sister, everybody has Bitcoin and kind of understands it from a different way. So for some other aunt saying, "Hey, what is this Bitcoin thing?" Then she talks to so many different people, and that's why this adoption phase will be so quickly at some point, because now we are just finding our ground. We are just now finding the first warriors in each family, for if we can put it like that. And if every family has at least like one person in there that understands Bitcoin to like at least 20% or like 15%, so he can talk about the fundamentals of it, then it gets a lot easier when the price comes up, because price runs up is usually the point where most people get interested in, and most people talk about it, because then it's in all the headlines, it's in TV channels, all the trending topics are there. So they talk about it, and then people are like, this Bitcoin thing, I saw it at 5,000 euros, then it went down to 1,000 euros, then it went okay, let's try it from the beginning. When you see it the first time, it has some price. Maybe it was at 5,000. Then you see it tanking down. You're like, oh, it's a scam. I know about it. I hope good that I did not get in, because now it's 1,000. Then it gets up to like 20,000, and you're like, what the fuck just happened? And then you are trying to wrap your head around what just happened. Then you're like, it's volatile. I don't like to get into that. Then it falls down again to like 5,000-6,000. Then you feel confirmed again because it went down. But then it went up to like 70,000, and you're like really seriously questioning like what happened. And more people along the way actually then get educated on it. And then the people that still did not get educated on it, they see it dropping again to like, what was it, 12,000, 15,000, something like that. And then they're like, oh, okay, finally, now it went down. But they also notice like, oh, the first time it went down to 1,000, then it went down to like 5,000, now it went down to 12,000. The bottoms keeps coming up, kind of, and now it went up again. It's like at 60,000, and every time it makes these price moves, people talk about it. And every time when people talk about it, there will be one or two Bitcoin guys in there. When there's no Bitcoin guy there in there, they're just like, it's a speculation. Let's talk about something else. But if there's one guy in there, like, and someone says like, oh, it's pure speculation, and I'm like, and then there's a Bitcoin guy saying like, I don't know about if it's pure speculation. There's some value to it, right? It's there since 15 years and stuff like that. And then they're like, oh, but what value? And then he might like get into the history of money. He might get into the properties of Bitcoin. So this is why this early phase is so interesting, because not a lot of people are now in Bitcoin. How many Bitcoiners do we have? 100 million, 200 million? It's really hard to get numbers, because the addresses are not really a number how many Bitcoin are in there, because a person can have like 50 addresses or 100 addresses, and at the other same time is like one address can have 1 million users on there if it's like a Coinbase address or something like that. So we really don't know how many people are actually in Bitcoin, but it's not a significant amount if we see the whole world population. It's not like 20%. It's probably under 10% still. And then when we look at people, we look at people like how many actually got Bitcoin, like how many hold Bitcoin, but how many actually got it, like how many actually understand it, or just holding some small ETF position, or just holding a Coinbase account, on how many actually got themselves a multi-signature wallet solution where they are holding 50, 70, 80% of the net worth in Bitcoin, geographically diversified in the wallet solution, and get the freedom grab technology, get the money grab technology, the number grab technology, and get every aspect of it. How many are those? I don't think there are a lot of them out there. And when I see on Twitter, this is something I do, everyone that I find interesting on Twitter that talks about Bitcoin, I put them in a list, and this list is like 400 people large, and I do everybody in there that talks about Bitcoin and is like a Bitcoiner, not like NFT, crypto, or also like stocks, but talks a little bit about Bitcoin, but just Bitcoin, or like the main thing is Bitcoin. There are not a lot of figures out there that talk solely about Bitcoin and are actual Bitcoiners. There are surprisingly a lot out there if you want to interview them, because I'm today at 124 guests, and I'm still booked the next 1 month, and so like there keep coming new people up, but it's not too much. Like I feel like I can get through all Bitcoiners to interview if there are no newcomers, but there will be a lot of newcomers in the next few years. So my point is really, we are early, we are laying the foundation, and at some point there will be this trigger point where we get like a God candle someday, or like some week where everybody talks about Bitcoin and this mass adoption actually happens. I like, obviously I don't know how adoption will continue from here, but I very much like the idea that Bitcoin surprises us in some way. Because one thing is for sure, nobody knows how exactly this Bitcoin adoption thing will hold up. We have a lot of points that we can point to that we are really certain that Bitcoin adoption will grow in the future, and that it could be the financial base layer of our system. I'm really certain of that. I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, it's okay for me. But I'm really certain that we have Bitcoin as our financial system, our base layer. But the fun part is seeing how this all shakes up. Because when we actually are right, and Bitcoin is sound money, then it's just a question of time till we measure everything in Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is our store of value, unit of account, and medium of exchange. Then it's just a question of like, oh, how does it play out? Like, which countries are going in first? What big S&P 500 company actually adopts a Bitcoin standard? Will Apple convert 50% of their balance sheet in, I don't know, 2028 in Bitcoin? Those are like really fun questions to think about, and just fun to observe it. And what I also try with the podcast is just like giving the Bitcoiners, the blabs, a stage to talk about everything, and then we have like a historical view where like, oh, this is what actually they said. Like, and there was a podcast that said every day interviewed people, and they said every day that this will happen, and this is how it's gonna play out. And yeah, it's fun to watch, and I'm really glad that I'm in this community.
I think you're right on so much that you touched on there. Do you think that what we're watching, as far as like, you had brought me on your podcast and you're like, you had talked a lot about politics and stuff that like, I never heard or I'd never seen on the news. And, I think a lot of that comes from like the fact that the mainstream media is lying and they've manipulated us. And a lot of Americans are waking up. So I want to play a clip from the chairman of, I think this is the St. Louis Federal Reserve. He was just on some talk show talking about Bitcoin. So I want to play this clip and then I wanted to see how you react to it and think if a majority of people are waking up and seeing the writing on the walls here. Check this out.
So 12 years in or 13 years in Bitcoin, it basically has shown no actual usefulness in the real world other than as a tool of speculation. And so look, I compare it to Beanie Babies. If you want to collect Beanie Babies, God bless you, collect Beanie Babies. But I'm just cautioning people who think this is an actual investment vehicle of usefulness. We learned, by the way, it was supposed to be an inflation hedge. And then when inflation took off and the Federal Reserve raised interest rates, Bitcoin got crushed. And so Bitcoin is not an inflation hedge. It is just another speculative asset, like a meme stock. I'm not opposed to meme stocks. If you want to trade meme stocks, God bless you, trade meme stocks, buy Beanie Babies, buy Bitcoin, that's up to you. I'm just cautioning you about thinking it's an actual investment vehicle or an actual currency.
Yeah, I made a podcast, I think like 3 days ago, which had the title, "Is the Western world too arrogant to understand Bitcoin?" And I feel like that's right on track with you. If someone says Bitcoin has no real world use case, they either actually are arrogant or stupid. Like they're either one of those, or they are lazy and not doing their homework. Of course, is also a possibility. So
what about manipulative? Like, what is he? He's obviously understands Bitcoin, right? Like, he's the chair of the Federal Reserve. These people don't. I mean, I don't think that's ignorance. So what is that when you're purposely misleading somebody? Is that malicious?
I'm always really cautious because obviously he should understand Bitcoin and he should know better, and he should not talk. He should not lie on TV. Unfortunately, I'm not 100% sure that he's lying, and I'm always really cautious with saying someone is lying, even though I'm not 100% sure. Most likely he's lying. Most likely he's saying stuff because he wants to preserve his own chair. He has obviously an interest that Bitcoin is not coming to fruition. He has an interest that the Federal Reserve has power. But there's also a lot of how can we call it, circle jerking, I think it's called, where
circle
like
jerking. Yes,
yeah, it's like they might be in such a deep circle that individual human beings, and he might be one of them, actually thinks that he actually thinks that it's true what he's saying. Like it's not completely impossible that he's so deep in the system, so deep involved in everything that's going on, and he does not even see anything else, because you have to know, like when he's in that room and in those situations, he's in there in the media. He's always like, he always has his glasses on. He goes with the same guys to drink a beer. He goes with the same guys to eat, and he's in his bubble, as everybody has his own bubble. But some people are willing to look outside of their bubble. Like Michael Saylor also said that Bitcoin is a scam at some point, but he was willing to go over his own ego and said, "Oh, let's look into this Bitcoin thing. My company has a problem with inflation soon because there's a melting ice cube. Let's look into this Bitcoin thing. Let's see it from first principles." And he either did not do it or is lying. Like there's like two possibilities. There's a good chance that he's lying. There's a good chance that he just wants to protect his own chair. But there's also a chance that he's actually just blind. I'm really cautious always with saying someone is really evil and says that he's lying, even though I put it as a higher probability than he's blind. I just want to like make aware that maybe not he, but maybe other politicians, because I've seen it also with in my own in my company that I was. There were a lot of people in there that obviously were not at the position that he is in, but they really believed those inflation things, and people that even studied economics, were in sales. They were like really clever people, but they were like, yes, but when we don't have inflation, the little people are struggling, right? And I'm like, no. The little people are struggling because of inflation, because the central bank is stealing from us. But people are sometimes so deeply involved in their bubble, in their system, in their own thoughts of their circle jerking, that they don't even dare to look outside of the box a little bit. So it might as well also be actually stupidity or laziness, but they might as well also lie and perceive something. And that's really interesting that we have now this area of we have YouTube, we have Rumble, we have all those different platforms where we can just speak. And of course, there's censorship going on YouTube. There's censorship going on Instagram. There's even censorship going on Twitter. Even though on Twitter it gets better and better, but we can still speak it, and people can find it. And that's a whole different level, a whole different game to what we had with, let's say, TV or like a newspaper, because there was a guy in the end of the day, one guy at the top said, no, we're not publishing this. Oh, yes, we're publishing that. And then you have a nice control of it. But on YouTube is a nice example, because there are so many videos uploaded. It's kind of hard to control everything. And there are a lot of Bitcoiners out there, even on that mainstream platform that reaches so many people, that have big followings, and they are speaking the truth about Bitcoin. Also, a lot of people get censored on YouTube. There's no question about that. Then they might go to Rumble. Or Nostra. There are a lot of different avenues you can go to and speak your own truth. And that's something really, really valuable in our times. And that's why those people who try to manipulate, try to anchor on their power chair, they will not be there forever, because truth will always win. It might be 100 years, it might be 5 years, it might be 1,000 years, but truth will win at some point. I hope it will win sooner. I hope the central banks and all the implications that the central bank has, if I say it cautiously, are going away at some point. But maybe they are clever and coming up with schemes that they can be in power longer. We don't know. They are in power for me already too long. Like they should. The central bank should not have been here for so many years. This fiat system is already too long here. So let's see how long it persists. But for me, it's also important to say, even if Bitcoin goes now down to $5,000 or $100, I want to be on the right side of history.
Yeah.
It's not about money anymore for me. It's about a freedom. It's about a revolution. It's about it's like that point where the French Revolution was starting. It's about way more than just making a quick buck in Bitcoin. And that's why I feel like even if Bitcoin dies, we Bitcoin community now assembled. We now are organized. We have connections to each other, and we will just start the next thing. Like who cares about the vehicle? It's about an idea that has been implanted in our heads. The idea of a free market, the idea of the individual, that's actually important and should be empowered. And so many ideas around that will not be stopped. Like you cannot delete ideas from the brains, and I cannot find a way where we are not successful in the long run. We might be there's a weird revolution right now with Bitcoin, because usually in a revolution, the people that are in the revolution are paying a lot to be in there. and suffering a lot in there. And we are in a Bitcoin revolution, and we are actually gaining resources. We are actually gaining purchasing power from it. Like we are participating in I feel like I'm not a history teacher, but I feel like that's the first revolution to be in, where you actually gain purchasing power the longer you're in there. And not just like in the end and you struggle a lot and you fight a lot. No, you're getting healthier when you're in the revolution. You're getting better. You're getting more intelligent. You get more connections. You get brotherhood. You get all those great things in the Bitcoin community that you did not really had in other revolutions. Except maybe brotherhood was stronger in other revolutions. Let's see, but you get my point. Like this is a revolution when you be in this, you're actually gaining financial power from that.
You think we're watching the separation of money and state? Do you think that that's what this is all boiling down to?
Yes, exactly. That's what this is about. We had the separation between religion and state. We had a lot of separations, and at the end of the day, state should be serving the people. It should be optional to pay taxes. It should be optional to pay fees for something like that. I'm totally fine for paying a fee when I drive over a street. I'm totally fine for paying a fee when I go to the doctor. I'm totally fine even to pay a small fee every month for people that don't have it that good. They might have born with a disability. Like there's nothing wrong with that. We should care for our people. We should care for our loved ones, and we should look out for each other. But there is something completely wrong with massive overhead that just tries to control and manipulate people. And that's what Bitcoin is setting an end to. And I hope it's sooner than later. I hope I can live in my 30s and 40s in a free world and I don't have to fight all my life for freedom. But if I have to, I will do.
Man, it's so powerful the way that you say that. You know, I don't want to fight for my freedom my whole life, but if that's what has to be done, then it has to be done, because we can't keep kicking that can down the road and passing it on to, you know, our children are figured out or our grandchildren are figured out. It's like, no, I'd rather suffer today so my grandchildren don't have to suffer in the future. So like, I don't think there's any going back from this. I think we've got to a point where there's enough people are awake that there's, like you said, maybe they can figure out a way to manipulate us. But at the end of the day, you have Bitcoin, which isn't trying to manipulate us. It's trying to basically do the opposite of manipulate you. It's the most transparent and trustless system that's ever been created. And it's the biggest fucking deal in all of human history. I think Eric Stacks does the best job at just highlighting like how big of a fucking deal that this is. And it's like, I was talking to Daniel White last night, and like right before I went online, it hit me how like just the private property rights and like really understanding and seeing what's happening in America right now, and seeing how, like, you know, if you have a rental property and you say you don't have a tenant in it for 30 days and somebody breaks in and, you know, basically sets up shop, and they can create a fake document that says that they've lived there for 30 days. It could be all be forged. It could totally be fake. And right. And then now you're having to spend 2 years in court trying to evict somebody who broke in illegally and is in your property. Right. My buddy Hernando has apartments in New York City. He got a bad tenant. It wasn't like a squatter. He rented to this person and then they wouldn't move out. Right. So for 2 years, he had this person in his apartment. And every time he would take her to court, because it was like a condo style apartment where you have a bunch of units kind of like in this big complex. Well, what you call them, your housing association, your HOA, I think that's what they call them in America. You have to pay fees for they cut the grass around the condos, they heat the pool, they, you know, make sure the roads are clean and plowed, and you pay a certain percentage to them. And they also have rules that you have to follow because you live in that community, right? So he would take this lady to court, and then she would go out onto the balcony and she would break railings. And then she would call the homeowners association and say, hey, I just want to report damage. So then they would start fining him for having the damage on the outside of the building. So it's like every time you try to take her to court to get her evicted, she would go damage the property. And then he'd have to not only pay her rent, but he'd also have to pay to fix the property, or he was going to constantly be getting fined every month and losing even more money. So when you talk about private property rights for the first time, you know, now humans are actually, even if you think about it, if Bitcoin hits a point where it even starts to slow grow and goes at 10 or 20% per year, But if you're saving in a currency that's hard and the currency is actually becoming more valuable over time, and everything around you is kind of getting cheaper because the value of your assets are going up. You're making 10%, but you're actually getting to keep 10%, right? And then now you're more incentivized to go put your money into Bitcoin than you are to put it into real estate. So that takes pressure off of this constant demand of buying pressure on houses, because you're more incentivized as long as Bitcoin's gaining in value higher than a house is going in value. And it always should technically go in value more, because there's always going to be more of a demand for that asset. I think like 40% of the houses in America right now are rentals. And it might even be more than that. It might be like 45% are rentals. And people don't need two houses. They just need a place to park capital, because they can't let their money sit in a bank. They know they're losing money. So it's like, as soon as you get dollars, you're instantly incentivized to spend them. And you're spending them on technically property, but you're seeing now how dangerous that is when your government can, basically violate your private property rights. And then to think about that as like people in Ethiopia, they maybe only can save $5 a week or $5 a month, and then being able to put that into a hard asset over a very short, not over a very short period of time, but over a couple years, 3 or 4 years. If these people struggle, I mean, you could go out of like some of the worst poverty areas in the world to all of a sudden have enough capital on you to kind of move around. And you can get it in a cell phone. Like, people are sending Bitcoin via text messages now, and like the technology that's being built around Bitcoin is not just this. Like, you have to have a supercomputer to access it, or you have to have a bank in your local town or district, and you have to have, connections to the IMF and somehow these money transmitters and all this shit. You have Bitcoin. You can do it with the cell phone. And just like, I guess, like the overall big picture of like, we are giving private property rights to every human on earth. So when people say that this is a big fucking deal, I mean, it is the biggest fucking deal in all of human history. I mean, it is up there with fucking fire, the light bulb, the wheel, the servo engine. Like, there's a lot of antibiotics, but Bitcoin in theory is going to save more lives than any technology ever invented in all of human existence. That's a big fucking deal. And that goes contrary to this depopulation agenda. So you have this freedom technology out there that's promoting love, happiness, abundance, faith, family, freedom. And then you have this World Economic Forum. There's literally 100 elite families that control every aspect of our lives. And they just want to take, they want to rape, they want to pillage, they want to plunder, they wanted to loot, they wanted to extort, they wanted to lie, they wanted to cheat. And it's a completely, like, when I say that there's two different parallel worlds being built, one is pure evil and one is pure good. So it's not very hard to see like what side of history you're on. You're either worshiping Satan or you're, worshiping God, basically. I don't know how else to better say it. Did I ramble on too long there? Oh, it was so good. He froze. I was like, is he saying something? He'll come back. Wait for it. We'll be right back, folks. We'll take a 2-second break here. Let's see. He might have to leave and come back. Let's see here. We were just talking about having issues like this that happen. He's like, yeah, it's nice when you're not live, because whenever you have issues, you can't tell because we post-produce it. So he's talking about it. And I was like, yeah, we haven't had any issues over here in the last couple of weeks where we had to shut down a stream or anything. But this one's going on that 1 hour mark. So let me disconnect him from this session. And let me give him a new link and tell him to join the new link here. Give me 1 second. We'll get Robin back in here. We'll get him back in here. Let's see here. Join this new link. I wonder if he doesn't even know that he's not live yet. Yeah, it's not on my end. I didn't lose internet yet. There he is. He's back. He's back. All right, you're back, man. Give me 1 second. I can't hear you yet. Let me add you to the scene and we'll get you back in here real quick. All right, we got your audio back. What up, buddy?
Sorry. I don't know, like firewall said something like that.
We were
I
just
have no
talking about that before you left. I was like, man, we were literally just talking about how streams freeze when you're live versus when you're post producing them. I was like, sure as shit, right at the end there. So I don't know where you, if you heard my rant or where I ended at, but I was just basically on a rant about private property rights and how big of a fucking deal it is to give private property rights to everybody.
It's a huge deal, and I heard your rant for, I feel like, I don't know, 4 minutes, something like that. So I'm just away for like 1 minute now, but it's a huge deal when you think about it. You can now go. I explained it to a friend recently. There's this concept of countries, and you can say like a country is like just an area, and there are fences around this area, and all of a sudden those small sheeps get flies because they can easily go from one country to another country, or like easier without them being harassed. Like for example, when you talk about having this was it is kind of talked about a lot with Roger Ver, and the thing where he got taxed even though he's not a U.S. citizen. And this was talked a lot about on Twitter, where he was taxed for something that he's not even now a U.S. citizen, and where we're like, oh, we are like really taxing people that are no longer U.S. citizen. They don't have things, and he even paid for it. Like I don't know the whole details of it, but I know that he got taxed for something that he actually should not have taxed, even when you think about it logically. And when we have now Bitcoin as like an asset that you can just take in your head with like 12 words, and you remember it, and you can go through all the borders and you just literally walk on there. That's powerful, and you cannot take it. And also what I got from your talk is like real estate is kind of a shitcoin. It's like it's not. I feel like it will crash in Bitcoin terms also the next 10 years as it did in the last 10 years. And with tenants, I don't want to deal with that. So I feel like Bitcoin is the better vehicle for most people.
You know, you're right. And while you were talking, it made me think of this video, and I just had to pull it in real time. So I got something coming at you. Check this one out.
Tax the rich, tax the billionaires. That's the solution. Let's take all their money. It's those guys' fault. And let me tell you why I think that's so dumb, is because when you look at the math, if we took all of the Forbes 400 richest people in the world and we clawed back all their wealth, something like $4 trillion, that would run the US government for 7 months. That's not going to do enough. Then what if we took 100% of their earnings every year, about 1 million people's earnings, and we took all their earnings? How long would that run the government? Well, it'd be about like $500 billion, and that would be 34 days. Oh, that's really helpful, Mr. Politician. When you talk about let's tax the rich, show me what that gets me. And what it gets me is 34 days of your salary. No thanks. We don't have a revenue problem in the US. We have a spending problem. And it turns out that politicians just need to know how to use a fucking calculator, and they don't.
You know, that's so like you think about it, you hear it from like a CNN headlines, like Bitcoin maximalist Roger Ver, fined for arrested for tax evasion. And you're like, so you have this giant behemoth government hunting down somebody who decided to say, fuck you, I don't want to agree to your laws or your rules. I'm going to leave this country. I'm going to take my wealth. And then 15 years later, 10 years later, they're hunting this man down in another country to go after him for some minimal amount. And even if they take everything that he has, it won't make the slightest dent. So our government's going to completely destroy the life of somebody who they have no business destroying the life of to acquire a amount of wealth that is so minuscule that it won't even make a dent in any reality whatsoever. So at some point, I think enough people wake up and they really realize, like, okay, like that's going to be me, right? It may be in a different context, but at some point, that same government is going to come with that same amount of power, and they're going to crush me the same way that they crushed him. And everybody goes, whoa, maybe that's not. Maybe the more you think about this thing, the more you really start to say government is never the solution.
It's absolutely not. It never was. It's fascinating for me when I see also the tax the rich. There's another component that I want to get in there. Whenever people or governments try to tax the rich, they actually tax the middle class. The income tax was the same way. They tried to tax the rich. They ended up to taxing the middle class, and it never works taxing the rich, because the rich will just move. There's the game theory behind that, and they should move, and it's good that they move. And I feel like when we have Bitcoin and we have movable money, when we have money that's easily transferable, this will eliminate a lot of the government agencies. This will eliminate a lot of the tax implications, because it's not good. Like if I can guarantee you that if the USA is having a really high tax on Bitcoin, a lot of people would leave at some point. And there can be exit taxes, there can be stuff like that. But even though they're like, oh, but I don't want to be a part of that system for too long. I don't know how the US system is taxing Bitcoin right now, but probably not too high. But if they are doing it too bad, or they are doing it too bad, there will be another country where there are no taxes on Bitcoin. And even if you leave with just 50% of your Bitcoin, or you just leave with them in your head, you're gone. And that's a powerful concept, I feel like. But there are a lot of open questions in that question, in the topic, and we're just seeing the beginning of the sheeps getting flies, and the sheeps are not flies. The sheeps are getting wings, and they can fly a little bit more. Yeah, it's a lot of things. Also, like with remote work, now it's easier to get to other countries and work from there, because maybe there's like a software developer has a good job. Every country will be accepting him because he has a good income. He will bring capital in the country. So why not accept him as a citizen? Then you're like, okay, let's have him. And then he can just move to another country. So there's a lot of aspects to why countries don't have that control in the future. They have to see to get the best talent in their own country. Like there will be a war or competition for the best talents in their own jurisdiction. That's what El Salvador is doing. They're giving free passports out for skilled people. They are saying, Bitcoin companies, come here. You will be treated good here. They are making really a lot of advertisement and marketing for the best and most skilled people to come and build a freedom heaven in El Salvador. So this is something really, really interesting what they are doing. And this is just a small window in what's happening in the next 10, 20 years, when all the countries have to do that. They have to acquire talent. They have to acquire capital. And you cannot do that if you are taxing the rich. You cannot do that if you are annoying people that just want to build stuff and innovate stuff.
You know, I'm working on this documentary right now that you say that, and I've been tossing around the idea of El Salvador, and I've been tossing around the idea of like making a business out of Bitcoin documentaries, and I've tossed around the idea, and the more I start to think it through, I'm like, okay, say this documentary I do, it does, you know, financially very well, like maybe this thing goes mega viral and turns out to be a really big hit, and I have I get the opportunity to turn this into something much bigger, right? I'm thinking about building if I can get the internet connection in El Salvador, which I think I can, building a network around Bitcoin. Like I'm thinking about moving there, buying a decent piece of property, and maybe even something with like multiple homes or multiple, kind of like almost like a compound, right? I want to build like a center warehouse, and inside that, 20 by 40 warehouse, it has 4 or 5 different studios for sit down interviews, different podcasting rooms, and then maybe trying to like, as like the Bitcoin community grows and it starts to migrate there, you're going to have other YouTubers and creators that want to move to El Salvador. And imagine like being able to move somewhere and you can either rent a place or like maybe giving deals for rental houses. If you move to El Salvador, you can stay in this house for free, but all you have to do is give me like one episode a week to put on our network or something, and kind of trying to build this network of Bitcoiners and content creators out of El Salvador in a way that I don't know. I just had this idea to build a network, and just I think about how cool it would be to build a network about Bitcoin in El Salvador, and how you would never have to worry about the rules or regulations here. And you're seeing Google and these corporations and shit moving to El Salvador. I think it's going to be a big freaking play, man. I think it's going to be a big deal. And I think there's going to be a need for almost like a Bitcoin network. And I know there's a couple out there that are trying, but.
That's an amazing idea. I feel like we should get more organized. We should get better connected to each other. And every try to do that, I will always support in whatever way I can. It's not impossible that I move to El Salvador at some point. It's far away from my home, and Austria is a beautiful country, honestly. And I feel like the rights here are quite good. I don't like that we are in the European Union, and a lot of bad aspects to that. But it's okay for me right now. But if it gets bad, or if El Salvador gets a lot better, because right now El Salvador there's a lot of things that are moving in the right direction, but it's early on. Like it's still like it could go the wrong direction also in 1-2 years. If for example Nate Bukele is no longer there, it's a startup that moves through an extremely nice direction, but it's not 100% sure that it will actually end up there. Nate Bukele does a lot of great things to make sure El Salvador has success in the long run, even if he is not there. So it will be interesting to see El Salvador in the long run. And it's an idea in my head to move at some point to El Salvador. And you're totally right. There already are creators down there. For example, I think of Lina Seiche, who was always on the go, but now she's actually kind of staying in El Salvador. And there are a lot of other examples, and the spirit there, the people there. I think El Salvador is the country from where I had the most guests on. Mm-hmm. I had 124 guests on, and at least 10 were from El Salvador already. I also released do day one with 2. So it's like there are a lot of people, really interesting people, that either moved there or were there for a year or came back. Like they were El Salvador like 2018, but now they see what's happening there. They want to come back to the family. So great things are happening there, and I'm also playing with that idea in the future. At some point, maybe I will go there permanently. I will definitely visit there. I probably will be there even this year, maybe in November, even when there's the Adopting Bitcoin conference. Not sure though, but might be there also for a longer period of time.
Man, it's gonna change the entire freaking world, man. And it's such a cool, to share this journey with you, and just watch this entire community be built up around Bitcoin. And I think, you're going to play a monumental role in its adoption and its future. And I think the network's lucky to have people like you out there creating this type of content and sharing this message with the world, man. So I know we're going over that hour mark. I want to be respectful of your time. And I just, want to say how grateful I am to have you on the show. And I appreciate the content you're putting out. And I want you to keep doing it. And I hopefully you'll come back and join us over here on the Ryan Matta Show as often as you'd like, my friend.
Anytime. It's always great to talk with you.
Great having you, man. Where can everybody follow you at? Where are you putting out all your work at? Where is the best way to get into contact with you? I know you got links to all your stuff down below in the description so that they can go over there and follow it. But tell us about how often you're putting out content, what channels, what networks, and what's the best way to get into contact with you if they want to get an interview with you or invite you on their show.
Best way to contact me is Twitter. I read all my messages and I respond to all, pretty much all messages. I'm really close to the 12K. I just see with the 11K. My YouTube is coming close to the 4K. I'm doing it there also. Like it's slowly happening. And yeah, I'm putting out the show every day. I'm actually like doing every day a YouTube, show. I'm also doing it on Twitter. I'm also doing it on all the podcast platforms. Like if you like to listen on Spotify, if you like to listen on Fountain, the Bitcoin platform, whatever you like to listen to, I'm there on the podcast platform. And yeah, would love to see you on Twitter, reaching out to me, or watch on the comment section on my YouTube.
Robin, man, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, buddy. Thank you for joining us today, and keep crushing it out there, man.
Thank you. It was a pleasure having you. I'm so used to having guests. It was a pleasure being on your show. I have to get used to that.
Yeah, man, I do the same thing, buddy. God bless you, man. Hopefully you have a great day, and look forward to seeing you back on here soon.
Bye-bye.
Run.